Queen Mary's breaking point. Will she accept King Frederik's shocking decision or rebel against the throne? Welcome to BNews. The question on everyone's lips today, November 7, 2025, is one that could determine the very future of the Danish monarchy. Will Queen Mary accept King Frederik's controversial decisions, or are we witnessing the beginning of an unprecedented royal rebellion that could tear the institution apart from within? As tensions escalate behind the gilded walls of Amalienborg Palace, royal insiders are reporting that Queen Mary has reached a critical juncture, a moment where she must choose between loyalty to her husband, protection of her children, preservation of the monarchy she has served for over 2 decades, and her own deeply held principles about what is right for Denmark and the royal family. This isn't just palace gossip or tabloid speculation, this is a genuine constitutional and personal crisis with implications that extend far beyond one royal marriage. Queen Mary, born Mary Elizabeth Donaldson in Tasmania, Australia, transformed herself from a commoner working in advertising to one of Europe's most respected and effective royal consorts. She learned Danish, embraced her adopted country's culture, raised 4 children in the public eye, and carved out a role that balanced tradition with progressive values. But King Frederik's radical reform proposals, including dramatically reducing the number of working royals, potentially removing their younger children from official royal life, submitting the monarchy to periodic public referendums, and implementing unprecedented transparency measures, have pushed Mary to her limits. Sources close to the Queen describe her as torn between competing loyalties and deeply concerned about the consequences of Frederik's actions for their family and the institution. The world is watching to see whether this popular, intelligent, and strong-willed queen will ultimately stand with her husband or take the extraordinary step of publicly opposing the king's vision for the monarchy's future. Before we dive into this explosive situation, you need to be part of our community. If you're obsessed with royal drama, fascinated by Queen Mary's journey, and want to know what happens next in this unprecedented crisis, you must subscribe right now. Hit that like button, smash the notification bell, and comment below with whether you think Queen Mary will stay and fight or walk away. We're covering every twist and turn of this royal saga, and your engagement helps us bring you the exclusive content you crave. Don't miss a single update. Subscribe to BNews today. To understand whether Queen Mary will accept King Frederik's decisions, we must first examine the complex dynamics of their relationship and the foundations upon which their marriage has been built. Mary and Frederik's love story captured hearts when it was revealed that they met at the Slip Inn, a pub in Sydney during the 2000 Olympic Games, with Frederik allegedly not revealing his royal identity until later in their conversation. Their relationship developed across continents, with Mary making the extraordinary decision to leave her life in Australia, learn a new language, adapt to a completely different culture, and accept the enormous responsibilities and constraints of royal life. Those who know the couple describe a genuine partnership built on mutual respect, shared values, and complementary strengths. Frederik has often credited Mary with helping him mature and focus, while Mary has spoken about Frederik's support during her difficult transition into royal life in Danish society. However, even the strongest marriages face challenges, and the unique pressures of royal life can amplify normal marital tensions. Since Frederik became king in January 2024, the power dynamics in their relationship have shifted in subtle but significant ways. As king, Frederik holds constitutional authority that Mary, as consort, does not possess. While Denmark's monarchy is constitutional and political power rests with elected officials, within the royal household itself, the king's word carries ultimate weight. This creates a situation where Mary must navigate being Frederik's equal partner in marriage while also acknowledging his superior position within the institutional hierarchy. Friends of the couple suggest that this dynamic has created friction, particularly as Frederik has made major decisions about the monarchy's future that directly affect Mary and their children without the extensive consultation that Mary believes such consequential choices deserve. The current crisis has apparently brought long-simmering tensions to the surface, with Mary reportedly feeling that Frederik's reform proposals reflect his priorities and vision without adequate consideration of how they impact her work, their children's futures, and the stability of the institution she has dedicated her adult life to serving. Queen Mary's concerns about King Frederik's decisions fall into several distinct but interconnected categories, each representing a legitimate source of tension that could ultimately prove insurmountable if not adequately addressed. First and foremost are her maternal instincts and concerns about how Frederik's proposals affect their children's futures and well-being. The suggestion that Princess Isabella, Prince Vincent, and Princess Josephine would not become working royals receiving public funding but would instead need to forge independent careers represents a fundamental change to the future these children have been raised to expect. Mary has reportedly argued that such consequential decisions should not be made unilaterally while the children are still young, and that they deserve a voice in determining their own relationships with the monarchy once they reach adulthood. She is particularly concerned about Princess Isabella, whose struggles with anxiety and identity questions have been documented extensively. Mary fears that publicly removing Isabella from the formal royal structure could be interpreted as rejection or diminishment, potentially exacerbating the mental health challenges her daughter already faces. Furthermore, Mary questions the practical wisdom of reducing working royals so dramatically, with only the king, queen, and crown prince Christian carrying out official duties. The workload could become overwhelming, and the monarchy's ability to maintain connections with the hundreds of organizations, causes, and communities it currently serves would be severely compromised. Mary has built her own portfolio of patronages and causes over 2 decades, becoming a respected advocate for issues including domestic violence prevention, mental health awareness, and social inclusion. She worries that the proposed reforms could undermine this work and the relationships she has carefully cultivated. Second, Mary has concerns about the transparency and accountability measures Frederik is proposing, particularly regarding royal finances and private life. While Mary supports reasonable accountability and recognizes that the monarchy must justify its cost to taxpayers, she worries that some of Frederik's proposals go too far, eroding the privacy and dignity that allow the royal family to function effectively. The question of whether Queen Mary will accept these decisions cannot be answered without understanding her options and the potential consequences of different courses of action. In the most straightforward scenario, Mary publicly and privately supports Frederik's reform agenda, presenting a united front even on proposals she has reservations about. This would preserve marital harmony, avoid creating a constitutional crisis, and allow the reforms to proceed with the full weight of both the king and the popular queen behind them. However, this option would require Mary to suppress her own concerns and potentially compromise on issues she feels strongly about, setting a precedent that could affect her voice in future decisions. It would also mean accepting changes to her children's futures that she may believe are not in their best interests. A second possibility involves Mary working behind the scenes to modify Frederik's proposals, using her influence within the marriage and the respect she commands among royal advisors and political figures to shape the reform package into something more acceptable. This approach would avoid public disagreement while still allowing Mary to protect her priorities and concerns. However, it requires that Frederik be willing to compromise and genuinely listen to Mary's input, something that sources suggest may be increasingly difficult given his apparent determination to push through transformative changes. Royal watchers note that Frederik has become more assertive and less consultative since becoming king, perhaps feeling that the weight of the crown gives him both the authority and responsibility to make difficult decisions regardless of opposition. If Frederik proves unwilling to substantially modify his proposals, Mary faces harder choices. A third scenario involves Mary taking the extraordinary step of publicly expressing reservations about some of Frederik's reforms, not in direct opposition but through carefully calibrated statements that make clear she has concerns while still supporting the general direction of modernization. This would be an almost unprecedented move. Constitutional monarchs and their consorts traditionally present absolute unity on institutional matters, and any hint of disagreement risks creating political complications and undermining public confidence. The most dramatic scenario, and the one that would truly constitute Mary refusing to accept Frederik's decisions, involves the Queen taking concrete actions that signal her opposition, potentially even separation or divorce if the disagreements prove irreconcilable. While such an outcome seems extreme and would shock Denmark and royal watchers worldwide, it cannot be entirely dismissed given the depth of the reported tensions and the magnitude of what's at stake. Historical precedents suggest such a crisis, while rare, is not impossible. Princess Diana's eventual separation from Prince Charles represented a consort refusing to accept the status quo and the constraints it imposed. More recently, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's departure from working royal life demonstrated that even those born into royalty can choose to walk away when they find the institution incompatible with their well-being and values. However, Mary's situation differs significantly from these examples. She married into the monarchy willingly as an adult, has invested over 20 years in the role, and has children whose positions would be dramatically affected by any decision she makes. Furthermore, as queen rather than merely a princess, Mary's departure would constitute an unprecedented crisis for the Danish monarchy. Denmark has never experienced a queen consort leaving or publicly breaking with the king on institutional matters. The constitutional, political, and social implications would be profound and unpredictable. Any such dramatic action by Mary would require her to weigh competing priorities that pull in different directions. On one hand, protecting her children's well-being and futures, maintaining her own sense of integrity and agency, and possibly preventing what she might view as harmful changes to an institution she has served faithfully. On the other hand, preserving her marriage, avoiding the trauma that public conflict would inflict on her children, maintaining the stability of the monarchy, and honoring the commitment she made when she accepted her royal role. Those close to Mary describe her as deeply committed to duty and service, suggesting she would exhaust every possible compromise before taking any action that could be seen as abandoning the monarchy. So what will Queen Mary ultimately do? Based on extensive analysis of her character, her history, her public statements, and reports from palace insiders, the most likely outcome involves Mary accepting Frederik's decisions in broad terms while successfully negotiating modifications to the most concerning elements, particularly those affecting their children. Mary has demonstrated throughout her royal career a remarkable ability to balance principle with pragmatism, to advocate for her priorities while recognizing constraints, and to work within systems to achieve incremental progress rather than demanding revolutionary change. She understands that the monarchy's survival depends on adaptation, and she likely shares Frederik's basic assessment that reforms are necessary. However, she will push for those reforms to be implemented thoughtfully, with adequate safeguards for the family's well-being and the institution's core functions. Specifically, Mary will likely advocate successfully for delaying final decisions about Isabella, Vincent, and Josephine's roles until they reach adulthood and can participate in determining their own futures. She will probably negotiate limits on financial transparency that preserve some zone of privacy for the family. And she will work to ensure that the pace of reform allows for adequate consultation with stakeholders including Parliament, the public, and the royal family itself. This approach would allow Mary to remain true to her principles while avoiding the catastrophic consequences of open rebellion. However, this predicted outcome depends on Frederik being willing to listen, compromise, and recognize that his wife's concerns are legitimate rather than mere obstacles to his vision. If Frederik proves inflexible, if he dismisses Mary's input as resistance to necessary change, or if he continues making major decisions without adequate consultation, the situation could deteriorate into one of the more dramatic scenarios. The coming weeks and months will be critical, as the couple navigates this crisis with the eyes of Denmark and the world watching for any sign of fracture in what has been portrayed as one of Europe's most successful royal marriages. Now we need to hear from you. Do you think Queen Mary should accept King Frederik's decisions to preserve the monarchy, or should she stand up for her principles even if it risks creating a crisis? What would you do in her position? Loyalty to your spouse or fighting for what you believe is right? And do you think their marriage can survive these tensions, or are we witnessing the beginning of a royal separation that will shock the world? Share your honest opinions in the comments below. We want to hear every perspective. If you're as captivated by this royal drama as we are, prove it by subscribing to BNews, smashing that like button, and sharing this video with everyone who's following the Danish royal family crisis. Turn on notifications so you're instantly alerted when we break the next development in this unprecedented situation. The fate of the Danish monarchy hangs in the balance, and we'll be here covering every dramatic moment.